Shemai, Croeso I Gymru. Hello, welcome to Wales. That's the upper Severn behind me. I've just arrived, put my chair down, got my gear out, and now I'm getting ready to cast out. How do you get more angling sessions in? A couple of important pointers. The first one is to push yourself. I've got my TNS top on there. That's a clue that I've been to work today. And bear in mind I live, well, the other side of Wolverhampton, and I work in Welsh football, so it's a journey in itself, there and back, every time I'm in. But rather than come to the end of the working day and think to myself, I want to go back home, I'm tired, I'm hungry, whatever it might be, I'm thinking, no, I'm going fishing. So I packed the car this morning. Push yourself, that's important. Obviously there's a limit. You can't kill yourself. You have to be within reason, but I'm sure we would all agree that we can push ourselves a little bit more than we do at the moment. So push yourself, get more fishing in like I have today. Instead of going home, go fishing. Secondly, make the most of every opportunity. As I've said, and as you can see from the screen there, I've been to work, and for me, I do love the upper Severn, always have done since I was a kid. I remember fishing a contest near Welshpool way back in the early 1970s, back in the days when we used to travel on coaches, or charabangs as people in my area used to call them. And I do love the upper Severn. It's small, it's intimate, so it's a great place. For me to travel to the upper Severn ordinarily is quite a journey, and therefore you need to make the most of it in terms of spending the day there. But because I work in Welsh football, I'm not that far away from the river. So killing two birds with one stone, making the most of the opportunity, a little bit of planning, a little bit of thought, I can get this session in, and lots of others that I make during the course of the year, not just to the Severn but all over the place. Right, I'm ready to go. I've done a little test of the swim in front of me. I've got 8 feet of water right underneath. Well, not even the rod tip, because the rod tip goes over, but I've got 8 feet of water right underneath where I'm sitting. Need to be careful I don't fall in. I do tend to do that quite a bit, but not necessarily completely, although I have done that in the past. But certainly I go home wet and muddy, and we've had a dry day. In fact, we've had a dry spell, and my wife says, what have you been doing? You look like you've been rolling around in the mud. So yeah, be careful where you fish, that's always important. But as I said, I've got 8 feet of water, it slopes away. I've got a nice little spot there. I'm going to finish talking now. I'm going to put some brown crumb and maggots out, and then I'll be back with a fish. I will be looking at some more serious chub fishing over the winter, but for now I'm happy to catch what we call a chublet. Tiny fish that hopefully in a few years become a 6-pounder. I'll run through the tackle that I use in the written blog entry, but you can see there my reel, and I've got a quiver tip rod. That's a 1/3 of an ounce lead. It's flat. The line, 4-pound, goes straight through to the size 18 Drennan Super Specialist hook, and I've created the hook length very simple. I've nipped on a shot, and then I've got a 5mm bead above that. Simplicity, but it works. Second fish, also the second species, it's a minnow. What you expect to catch on the upper Severn, although in my last visit here I failed to catch a minnow. Can you believe it? I'm certainly in amongst the chub. They're all small ones though so far, and of course they will naturally group together, especially down the side, won't they? Because the big ones eat the small ones. That's the nature of the beast. We talk about dog eat dog world out there. Well, this is certainly a fish eat fish world for sure. The third species is another small one, but a roach this time. I think it's roach one, minnow one, and chub. I've lost count, about 10 I think so far. And not wishing to be left out, this is a very lively one. Well, I've returned it. It was so lively, it was going all over the place. So take my word for it. Species number 4, the bleak. I'm getting fish every single cast, but I'm going to hold that one to the screen for the simple reason, the gudgeon, species number 5. I'm fishing off the main flow. I've got overhanging willows just downstream, so I'm fishing the area just above those branches. Still got leaves on, but they won't shortly because we're now into autumn. Of course, I tend to go my own fishing seasons, September, October, November, as the autumn months. The river is looking good. It has been up significantly. I'm in some muddy bits here, but it's dropped, and obviously the deeper water that I've got in front of me does create a little bit of a swirl, and that's great because as the water swirls, so does the food, and it's also off the main flow, so the fish aren't fighting the current all the time. It's watercraft, isn't it? When I was a kid, I mentioned that I was on a match here back in the early 70s, probably 71, 72, something like that. And back then there were no commercials, and I'm not knocking them, by the way. I think they do serve a great purpose generally in the angling world, especially for beginners or kids or ladies. A lot more security. Obviously where I am now, I'm miles from anywhere. You wouldn't necessarily want your kids to be here, or even a lady on her own. But back then there were no commercials, and when you came match fishing, you came to somewhere like this. The people that ran the club would walk along, and if there were 20 anglers, they'd find 20 spots and they'd put pegs in, hence the term a peg. And you'd have a number and you'd draw it out, and you get number whatever, you'd go to it, and you'd be there for the next 5 hours fishing. You couldn't move if you wanted to. Watercraft, it was about reading the swim, it was about reading the spot, finding out what's there, finding out the depths, learning as much as you can in a short period of time, because the chances are you would never fish that spot again in your lifetime. And I used to love that. I used to love the draw, and sometimes you had a good one and you did well, other times it was a real struggle and you had to work really hard to find some fish. And I remember the spot on the Severn, it was near Welshpool that we fished, and it was so shallow you could see all the way across, very narrow of course being the upper Severn, you could see all the way across, and then on the far bank overhanging trees, and the water was deeper, so that's where you cast. And I caught my first grayling. I can remember my first fish, which was a gudgeon. I can remember my first flounder from the estuary at Rill when I was a kid as well. But I can also very clearly picture my first grayling coming from the Black Country. We don't have any grayling rivers in the area. I'll tell you what, though, I'm loving this session today. I'm fishing with maggots. It is basically catch what comes along. That's the great thing about angling. I can have my more serious sessions, and then other times I just come out and catch predominantly small, lively chublets. But whether you're sitting on a gravel pit, bivvied up for a week, maybe not even getting so much as a line bite, as long as you're enjoying it, that's the important thing. Or like me today, catching or certainly having a bite every cast and catching lots and lots of fish. It's all about enjoyment. As an all-rounder, I actually like sitting on gravel pits after big carp, but I also enjoy this as well. I think for me, one of the things that keeps me bubbling away, my passion and enthusiasm for angling bubbling away, is the fact that I'm a genuine all-rounder. Venues, methods, species and tactics. I'll fish for anything, anywhere, using any approach. Today though, I'm enjoying this and it's great, isn't it? It's a lovely, lovely day as well. I'd still be here if it was raining, that wouldn't make any difference. But it's a great day, and as an angler, you know exactly what I say when I talk about the lure of the water. It keeps bringing us back. I'm already thinking, when am I next in? When can I come again? Well, I'm down in South Wales this weekend. The top flight Welsh League kicks off, the JD Cymru Premier. So no fishing for me on Friday or Saturday, but I shall certainly be fishing in the meantime. Back home, another chub there, and then I'll be out again on Sunday. Fishing and football, it's not a bad life, is it? I've caught half a dozen roach maybe so far. That's certainly the biggest, not massive, fish, of course, but I'm most certainly enjoying the variety that today's session is bringing. I've just caught and returned a small dace, so that's probably exhausted the species that I would expect to catch. Anything else would be a real bonus. I haven't had a perch yet. This is my third session in recent weeks on the upper Severn. I did have a pike on. If you follow my blogs, you'll know all about that. And that was a pull. That's another. What is that? That's down at my feet there. I'm in the right by the water. It's a little roach there. Did have a pike on. Certainly the fish are feeding today, but part of that is the watercraft that I spoke about. Doesn't matter what type of angling you do, what you want is to go to the fish rather than expect them to come to you. You're already in the driving seat if you do that. Give it time, you can bait up, and it might take hours, it might take days if you're carp fishing on these big lakes, but eventually you can draw some fish in. But if you know where the fish will be, then you can get off on the right foot. And especially in the winter, bear in mind the water temperature is still good. The fish are very active, so they are feeding. It's hard to go wrong sometimes when you're on certain waters in the warmer months of the year, but when the nights draw in, the days are shorter than the nights, the water temperature will fall significantly, and that's when you need to make the most of the watercraft, the knowledge, the experience that you build up over years.